Welcome to my podcast, Today's Dream, Tomorrow's Reality. My name is Vicki Poole. I'm a master transformational coach and hypnotist specializing in habit change. This podcast is sponsored by the Enlightened Peach, and it's all about embracing our mosaic life. And some of you may ask, what is a mosaic life anyway? Well, it is recognizing that all the pieces of our life, the good, the bad, the indifferent, have all come together to make us who we are. Change any one thing, and we are different. With that in mind, I invite you to embrace your perceived imperfections and celebrate who you are. This podcast is unedited and raw, just like life. And I am your host, and I have a special guest that I'm introduce in just a moment. But before then, I would love to ask you to do me a solid. And that means leave a comment on this episode. And remember to like, subscribe, and share because I have amazing guests with amazing stories. And I really want to help them get their stories out even further. And the only way that happens is with your help. So go ahead, leave a comment, and remember to like, subscribe, and share. So now let's get started. Now, before I bring this lovely lady out, I will tell you that I met her because I had joined a group. I had a coach, and it was a group program for business, and it was amazing. And Reaudan was actually one of the other group members that were studying under James's tutelage, and so we have connected and stayed connected, and it's just a beautiful thing. She's got such a wonderful spirit, and I can't wait to dig into some of the things. I know some things about her from being in the group with her, but there's so much more to explore, so I can't wait to do that. So I'm going to bring her out. Oh, where's she at? There. Yay, Reaudan, there you are.
Hello.
It's so great to have you here. I'm excited to share your story and a little about you. If you don't mind, you could go ahead and tell our watchers, our listeners, just a touch about you, and then we'll dive into some conversation about it.
Okay. Well, I go by Reaudan, Lady of Love and Light. I'm also known in some circles as White Owl Woman, and my birth name is Roberta Lowry. And I've been, a healer ever since I can remember. At this point in my life, I do shamanic, holistic health and wellness practicing, practicing that as a practitioner. And that includes Reiki, it includes NLP, cranial, sacral, and transformational coaching. And I do personal readings for people, but I've kind of taken an integration of everything, all the tools that I've learned over the years of me beginning with my career in physical therapy. And in my education for that, I took mental health and behavioral sciences, in psychology and sociology and philosophy and things of that nature. And so then once I began to practice in the field of physical therapy, which I did for 26 years, I'm no longer practicing physical therapy. I'm retired because I had an accident. As the universe would have it, it was time for me to try a different approach and, no longer focus on the physical, mental approaches.
So can I ask, what was the accident?
Yes, I was a traveler at that point. So I was packing up my van, and I had my arms full of things to put in my van, and I stepped off the curb and down I went. And unfortunately for me, I had everything in my hands and my arms.
So I brace yourself.
Yeah. And so I ended up on already degenerative joints in my knees. I ended up hitting on my knees going, oh my God. And I bounced over to the right side, and I injured my shoulder, my neck, my back, and my hip, all, basically my whole left side, as well as traumatized and ended up overstraining, stretching every ligament every tendon and every muscle in my knees.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so that took me out of a very thriving career, 26 years of that. But during the time of my career and putting my hands on people, doing physical rehabilitation with them, and knowing the body's physiology, I began to sense energy in the body, and my hands would automatically go to wherever I needed to go to work on people. And I just had that sixth sense and that feeling, and people would start giving me feedback. What are you doing? Did you start the ultrasound? I thought we were going to do the massage first or this first. And it's like, no, I haven't, so they were feeling the energy. And sometimes they would describe it as a buzzing, a tingling, or just intense heat. And as I began to work with people with my hands, because I really loved manual therapy as well, but my whole career, I've had a very interesting, diverse background, but I learned that I could manipulate the energy and draw it out.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, so I just trusted my instincts, and I would do that, and my patients would get better. And
so when you say you were pulling the energy out, so there's an energy that's to the injury.
Right.
Okay.
And so I could sense that, and I would just start pulling the energy out of them. And I didn't really have any idea what I was doing. I was just going on my instincts. And then in 94, I was working at a place, and they laid me off. Well, that's not physical therapy is very high demand, but I was working in a behavioral and mental health facility for adolescents at that time in the role of providing physical therapy for them. And it devastated me. And a friend of mine said, well, hey, I'm going up to Arkansas, and why don't you come along with me? And I was like, well, I can't. She goes, what do you have to do? You just got laid off. I was like, oh, yeah. I mean, I was total shock. So I ended up going up there with her and found my Reiki master, who I didn't even know what Reiki was. But I began to talk with this gentleman, and he was like telling me, he goes, well, I'm getting ready to do this weekend as a class with a few women. And if you would like, I would love to have you, initiate you into the Reiki and practicing. So I was like, wow. And from what he had described, it was kind of already what I was doing. But what I didn't realize at the time is that before Reiki, I was channeling all my energy into people, my life force, my chi. And Reiki opens you up to channel from the divine. And so becoming and not using your own life force, it just you channel the divine energy through you. And so I began to do that. But I was always interested in reflexology and the needling that they do, and all kinds of alternatives. So I've always sought out.
Acupuncture, you mean?
Yes, acupuncture.
Okay.
And even in physical therapy, we use pressure points to relieve. So I knew all about that, and I knew the principles, but I really began to seek out that. And then I would run across people, and we would have conversations, and I was like, wow, so, I just allowed my other interests to guide me. And I did that throughout my whole career. And one of the things that, as I was practicing in this mental health and behavioral place for adolescents, is that I ran across my very first mentor, aside from my Reiki master, and she was a psychologist who was specialized in past life regression and hypnosis. And she was a very pioneer in her field. And so I was really lucky I had gone to her, because I started having some issues about having some panic attacks. I couldn't get out of my car whenever there were particularly men around, a couple of them, or if they were staring at me or looking at me, and I would begin. And so I wasn't sure what was up with this, and I went to her, and discovered some deep issues that I had pushed way down, and I had, as if I didn't know my own story, you know, I just
Mm-hmm.
forgot about it. But so in that process, you know, of working with her and her knowing that I worked with kids, and we began to talk, and she said, you know what, I want to teach you. So she taught me. And, you know, but it was in that moment. And at that point, I really, had just began to uncover a little bit of what had been going on with me. And so, you know, I just continued on my journey. I did some healing with her, but I continued, and I didn't really, there comes a point sometimes when we're not ready to face issues. And so that I came up against that wall, and I was like, well, I'm going to let this go for now. And she goes, that's fine. But if you ever, you know, and so I did, I just, you know, went on with my life, and, you know, kind of continued in the field of physical therapy. I was doing traveling work, and at the top of my career, boom, I went down, you know. But before that had happened, probably in 2000 and 2001, that was 9/11, right? During that time, I had been things that you don't want to deal with. The universe is going to make you deal with it at some point. And everything that I had pushed down was like a little Dutch boy with the wall, you know, the story about the Dutch boy, and you're putting your finger on this crack and that crack, and it just keeps, and it gets bigger until the dam breaks. Well, that's what happened to me. My dam broke. And it turns out, and I don't mind talking and sharing this, but I had been sexually assaulted and abducted. And I escaped from that person. And in doing so,
How old were you? Do you know?
Back then I was 27.
When you were abducted, or when you were
Yeah.
remembering? When you were abducted?
No, when I was abducted.
Okay.
And so and then I was 41 when it came like boom, you know, and I just was like in shock and falling apart, and it was like my world began to quake, you know, like a volcano erupting. And then after everything started,
what was I know you did that work and then you walked away from it for a while. What was the trigger that kind of brought it all into the open?
So a friend of mine, a male friend, and I had been working closely, and I went over to visit him one night, and we crossed the line of friendship. And he, you know, in the middle and doing that, you know, he was holding me, and I started having a panic attack. I couldn't breathe, and I was like, you know, and I was like, okay. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. What's going on? Just take deep breaths. And I started taking deep breaths, and I was like, okay, you know, I'm settling down, and I'm feeling okay. And, you know, it was a sexual encounter with him, you know, and a little later on in the night, when, which was more him holding me and holding me close and pulling me close to him, I went into more panic attacks where I couldn't breathe. And at one point I started having flashbacks of this gentleman that was holding me captive, and I couldn't escape him. And he was holding me in an embrace. And the way I escaped him by knowing, you know, when the body is fully at rest, and knowing not, and waiting him out but every time I would move, he would pull me back closer, you know. And so that, in a loving manner, you know, years later, with someone who it should have been a nice, you know, sweet encounter, became very revelating to me, you know, where it just sent me into like flashbacks, and I had no idea what was going on because I didn't remember it. You know, that's how powerful our mind and our subconscious mind is to protect us, because I now realize that I didn't react the way I thought I would have, you know, at the time, if that ever happened to me. No, I went into survival mode, and something else behind me, picked up and just saw me through it,
Right.
and
That's one of the things that when people start judging someone for the way they act in a big circumstance, I always think, "Oh, baby, you don't know
no,
what they're going through right now, and
yeah,
maybe that is the only thing that gets them through," you know?
yeah.
So I think people are so quick to judge someone that has been in something like that.
And they are, and part of me, my not wanting to be judged, I never reported it. I got away, and it's just like you see in the movies where you can barely get, your key in your car door to escape, and hoping and praying that this man doesn't catch me between me getting out from under his grip, getting my stuff together, getting some kind of clothing on to where I could walk out the door and get in my car and leave, and that whole thing, and then just being in shock and just going horrified and not knowing what to
So
do.
was this someone you knew?
No, not I know it. And, those are things too. I judge myself as like, I never should have gone with this man. But at that point in time, my intuition said no. And I had been in a bar, a friend of mine was a bartender, and she said, "Hey, this guy wants to buy you a drink." And I was like, "No, I don't want, no, thank you." And, and because I had been separated from my, now ex-husband, but then I was just separated from him. And I was just like, no, I really am. I'm good. And she's like, well, I watch you all the time bounce men off you. They approach you and you just got this wall up, and you need to start letting that down because it's been almost, a year and a half now, and da 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 da. And so the second time I was like, no, I don't. And then the third time I was like, and then I saw my ex-husband in the bar, and I was like, well, maybe I will,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so against my better judgment, I did. One of my big takeaways is from that always is trust your intuition,
Yeah,
period.
and I have been with I've had times in my life where I was would go with a bunch of friends to the bar and stuff like that. And I don't know how many times I would be there with another girl and she'd end up meeting some guy and she'd say, "You can take my car. I'm going to go with him." And then I would be in a
Mhm.
panic all night long
Oh,
until she
yeah.
showed up,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
all I could think was all these horrible things that might happen and they always showed up and it was like,
Yeah.
okay,
Thank
but
goodness. Thank
but
goodness.
I know, but for me, for some reason, that was really a horror thing that would just grip me really tight
Yeah.
when they would do that,
Yeah.
Um, and so it's really interesting how quickly we can fall prey to that stuff, right? I
It
mean,
is.
it can happen anywhere, and so if anybody's watching or listening, let this be
Mhm.
something to be aware of, because
Yes.
especially when we're in our 20s and everything,
Exactly.
we are just invincible and we don't
Exactly.
really grasp the magnitude of what can happen
And we
sometimes.
don't think that it could happen to us.
I
It
know
happens to
everybody
other
else.
people, and I want to is like, we're talking about judgment and like the Me Too movement, it's like they get a lot of bad raps, like, well, if it was true, why didn't they come forward? Well, I can tell you why, because number one, you didn't react the way you thought. I thought I would have fought tooth and nail to the death. And that, it didn't happen, and I realized that in order to survive, some part of me realized that I just had to wait
Be
it out.
submissive. Yeah.
And so, it's like I talk to people about assessing, you know, looking for the opportunity and knowing when to run, that fight or flight. And
Mhm.
my said, wait it out and just, and I did that. But, the other part of it was like, I lived in a small town at the time and everything goes into the papers. Well, there was no way I was going to have my being violated, put out to everybody
Mhm.
to know. I mean, that's people cannot understand until you've been through it. That is one of the most horrible things that can happen to a man or a woman,
Right.
is or a
And
child.
I haven't had what happened to you happened to me. I had an incident where there was someone that I knew that when I was only in the sixth grade, I think it was seventh grade, something like seventh grade. I mean, so how old does that make me? Hell, I don't even know. But anyway, they would expose themselves to me all the time.
Mm.
And there
Mm-hmm.
were adults all over the place, but he always was strategic in the way he did that so that I would see it, you know.
Right.
And so um, I didn't tell anybody for the longest time because
Mm-hmm.
I thought, I'm just a kid. They're not going to believe me. They'll
Yeah.
believe him. And
Yeah.
I think that happens a lot of times too. Women, especially, you know, younger women, keep their mouth shut because who's going to believe me anyway?
Right. And, and two, for me, in my case, I had predators know, okay? They
Mm-hmm.
know how to approach, they know who is vulnerable, and they look for those vulnerabilities. And me being a therapist, he told me a sad story about his wife dying in his arms and blah, 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 blah. And it's getting crowded in here and smoky. Do you mind if we step outside? And I was like, sure. And he went as far as to give me his license and me show my friend. And she was like, oh yeah, okay. And I was like, so I'm heading out with this person. And at that point, I was doing something illegal at that point in time, is like he offered me some smoke pot. And
Mm-hmm.
at that point in time, that's how I dealt with my separation from my ex-husband, drinking and other, it's like, and I was never that person, up until a certain point when, my ex-husband pulled the rug out from under me and my world crumbled at that point, so it's like that judgy. And it's like, okay, nobody's going to believe it, number one, because I went with him willingly to this room. And I knew I was in trouble when he put the chair under the door knob, and wedged it in and locked it up. And some point of me, and then he turned to me and there was nothing in his eyes. This was an evil, I mean, people look in people's eyes. But even at the time I was, in the bar and out, that person was different than the person that came out and did what they did to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's like that judging and judging myself and going, I should have never, I did. And I was so ashamed, and the shame and, so I just, when I did escape, I drove and I drove and I drove and I drove out into the middle of nowhere because I used to do home health. And so I screamed and I cried and I was so angry at God and my parents, for not warning me about these kind of things, and at my ex-husband and at myself and my friend and, and this person. And I just was like this wounded animal unleashing and screaming. So for me, by the time I let all that out, I went to my friend because I was staying with her because I lived about 343 miles away. I had moved, and so I was visiting her for that weekend. And then I went to her house and I got in the shower and I just ran cold water over me, for an hour or so. And, and then I left her a note saying, I decided to go back to San Antonio. I'll talk to you later,
So you didn't
and
tell her either?
no, I didn't tell anybody for years. I mean, years. And I know I had, at some point I remember telling a friend of mine, but she had a similar story. But then after that, I don't remember, it went back down,
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was, when all this started coming up, and I just was like, I had no clue why I was crying all the time and so sad. And I called a friend of mine said, hey, because I had a roommate at that time. And so, after this unraveling, my earth, when, with a different situation years later. And so she was like, call the rape crisis hotline. I think they can help you. I think you're experiencing something. And I said, I know. I said, I know I'm had enough pieces that I was raped, but I don't know. It doesn't belong. it didn't feel like it belonged to me still,
Mm-hmm.
even telling
Mm-hmm.
her, like, and even through all the therapy up until a certain point, it didn't feel like it was me. And I just couldn't imagine how am I, how does this happen? But it's called disassociated, and
Yeah.
it's not the disassociation where you have all these personalities. No, I disassociated from my body. I was, I pulled back. I never experienced the fear that I should have at that point. And so those were things that I had to deal with in, when it finally did come up in order to, get therapy. So I spent, 4 years of my life in therapy, intense therapy, and I wasn't working until I could go back to work again.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, and so I continued with my life, and I did, and things too. I want to tell people, if you don't feel that you're being heard by your therapist, by all means, request another one,
Mm-hmm.
because I
Definitely.
had this one lady, she was burnt out, and I could tell because I worked in the mental health behavioral, at some points. And she was like, why don't you just need to get over it now? And I was like, I'm in the midst of unraveling and I don't even know exactly. And you're telling me to get over with it. And, so I went and I did, I did change therapist. And then I ended up with an art therapist, which was very wonderful tool for me. And, but then she moved on. And so then I went to another person and then they moved on. And so finally I reached out to a place in Austin, Texas called Safe Place. And they took me on. They don't, it's usually for battered women and children, but they took me on as a client to help me because nobody could understand. Because not only had that occurred to me, I had been, before that incident, I had been raped by an acquaintance. And I didn't report that to anybody. So that had become like my pattern.
Pattern.
And
Mm-hmm.
then that same person tried it again with me, and then there was then after a couple of years after this, and these are things I didn't put together, but after the main incident, which I call the abduction, because it was many hours and he was planning to take me away where nobody would ever see me again, ever. And he told me as much, and threatened me with a hunting knife and pulled it out and said, what makes you think I'm not going to slit your throat from ear to ear and leave you to die when I'm finished with you? And my whole thing was just in survival and, mode, and some other part of me kicked in and took over. But it's one of those things. And so I didn't realize that, like, I had a pattern to begin with of not telling,
Mm-hmm.
and that it had happened to me before, and I kind of pushed it down out of my mind because I couldn't deal with it because it was a friend of mine's brother, and then I went on a date and he got drunk and I met him in my car and I drove, I was being smart, but he got drunk. So I had to end up taking him home. And then once I got in, he forced himself on me. And so another time I just put it, under, for me, I would go into sleep and hibernation and not do anything and call in sick and then kind of come out of it and go back to work and resume my whole life working so hard, 14 hours a day,
So disassociate even more. Yeah.
exactly. And so it's, and it's so important, like you and I do this work that we do, which is, coaching and hypnosis and going deep with the subconscious mind and unlocking, because that is what is in control, and our conscious mind is just taking in all kinds of things and making up stories and putting boxes around it and really isn't like an avoidance,
Right.
and so I really want to reach out to anybody who is in that place and really needs help. I'm always available to talk, and to guide, and help. And if I can't help you, I can refer you to who can, because
Right.
certainly there are times when you need a psychologist, which I'm not
Right.
qualified
And a lot of
as.
times psychologists will work in tandem with the hypnotist,
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
that they're getting that help over there and then they're getting the actual movement from
Right.
it, so that, because therapy like that by itself with a psychologist could take forever,
It
but you
does.
you you tag it with a hypnotist who can kind of help speed that process of
Hmm.
change up, then I can actually change so much in a lot
Right.
shorter period of time.
And definitely in a shorter period of time, because and I've gone on to help other people, and even in myself, doing my own after the facts, of really perfecting my skill and learning neurolinguistic programming in addition to coaching and hypnosis, and combining it, is that like I said, your subconscious knows, your body knows what it's ready to deal with and what it's not.
Hmm.
And when you start talking, the language that we utilize, and the techniques, we get the subconscious and the conscious mind on board. And any resistance that we're having can be brought to, it comes up. I know for me, when I work with people, and I will talk them through and how to release and be more allowing and acceptable. And sometimes it's just not the right time, and that's okay. But
Yeah.
at least they become aware, and bringing into conscious awareness, you know, and that's the big key. And combining them, because all those years, like I said, it took me 4 years of intense. I was going 3 times a week, and in the
Yeah.
beginning, I was going every day for a month or so. But you're not always going to find the right therapist that understands, like, and because of the patterning, like, they don't understand, very few, or probably more than what I even realized, or they, the profession realizes, that there are a lot of men, women, and children out there that they have been victimized multiple times, and so they don't know how to deal with that.
Hmm.
A lot of them. I mean, there are some out
Right.
there. So it takes some finding those people, and and that kind of leaves people going, forget it, and
Yeah.
then you suffer, and it just grows and grows and grows. And part of what I do is I've been through it, but I also have educational experiences, in mental health and behavioral health and physical rehabilitation. But I now incorporated spiritual, because we forget about our spiritual etheric body, our soul,
Hmm.
and integrating a lot of other tools that I have come across in all my years of experience. But it's like I was able to return to work, and then I worked for 4 more years, and then I had the accident where I fell, and that took me out of my physical therapy practice, period. And along the way, I was doing the others on the side with friends and friends of friends and people who found me, here and there. But the universe said, okay, Miss Superwoman, you're still avoiding, and you are thinking you have to heal everybody you come across. That's not true.
Yeah.
You're not Superwoman, and just because you can doesn't mean you have to. You're not
Hmm.
taking care of yourself. You're sacrificing yourself at the expense, of helping others.
Yeah.
And
I like to say that God, the universe, does this little whisper, you need to slow down. And then it says,
it,
you need to slow down. And then it says, you need to slow down. And after it says it a few times, it's a baseball bat. That's your accident, right?
it is. And I tell people, literally, the universe, God had to take me down to my knees, because you know what? It wasn't the first time that they told me I needed to slow down. I needed to take care of me. And I didn't, you know,
Mm,
and that,
there's
it was
another
minor.
pattern.
Yeah. And we, as particularly women, we are caregivers, we're nurturers, and men are too. And there are a lot of men in those roles, single dads, and taking care of their family members and
Being
their families,
nurses.
you
Yeah.
know, and we sacrifice ourselves, and that's something that I woke up, and especially after, so it took me 10 years. I ended up in a wheelchair because the universe literally knocked me to my knees took me out of, said, oh no, I know you. As soon as you get a little better, you're going to be back out in the field trying to practice again, because I loved what I did, but I didn't realize how much my identity was caught up in that, and how much my ego was thriving on it. And, and my need to be like people pleasing, and be that,
Well, everybody wants to be liked, right?
right.
And when you're doing those kinds of professions and you're touching people and you get that that instant gratification of, oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much, and all,
Yeah.
and I'm a hairstylist too. So I do the touching thing, but it's on a little bit of a different level.
Yeah.
But I can say that sometimes it's not hard. It is sometimes challenging to remove yourself from what you do. But, I think a lot of people really have that issue, because look at how many people, when they retire from work and suddenly they're in no man's land and they're lost and they don't even know how to function anymore. Who am I? I thought this was what I was, and now I'm not doing that anymore. So who am I? And, and the demographic of the world is getting to be a little bit older, right?
Right.
And so, I mean, the amount of people that are walking around like zombies trying to figure out what they want to be when they grow up is astronomical.
Exactly. And, and for me, just, I've been on a spiritual path for many, many years. And even that, and practicing, and, you're still doing that. And, it's like, and every time something is like happening, it's like, oh yeah, so now who do I want to be when I grow up,
That's right. That's right.
But we are transformational beings, period.
Right.
And I am that phoenix. I have risen, I have fallen so many times, not only in these incidences, but throughout my life. My ex-husband pulling the rug out from under me, different disappointments and setbacks and things like that. And I refuse to let it. Here's the thing, anybody, it's a choice, period.
Yes.
If you're listening to the sound of my voice, you're supposed to be, because even if you take this away, this is the only thing that you need to ever remember, is you have a choice. You can either be victorious or the victim, period. And it's as simple as that, as making the choice. Now, the actions are not by any means simple.
Right. Right.
It is a journey. And just like anything worth getting through, is worth the effort you have to put into, and you can't just sit there, it's okay to sit there and go, wah, 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 woo, woo, poor me. Cause I definitely did some of that, spiraling down, crying.
Yes, we all do.
Like, yeah, cause we're human and we've got to remember that. But by nature, we want to get up and we want to succeed, and that transformation, life is full of changes, and it's how you handle it, look at it, and embrace it.
Definitely. It's like, I was talking to I have a free Facebook group that I pour into all the time. And this morning I was talking to them, and one of the things that we're doing this month is we're focusing on the magic of life and what things are magical. And so what I was explaining to them this morning, that even the obstacle that shows up so that things don't it seems like something happened that wasn't so good.
Right.
That's actually part of your journey.
It
and
is.
It's finding the magic of the lesson in it, because that's the magic, is to step aside and see what you can learn from it.
And that's the soul's journey. And that's what, back in my day, for sure, because I graduated in 82, started practicing physical therapy at that point. Well, the free stuff you do in school, but, that it's like, there's we're West Eastern, we're considered Eastern medicine. And so I call it the more traditional, but it's not traditional, really. It's modern, forgets about the soul. And I went through being into physical rehab. It was about physical medicine, and then I utilized my love and, went out and branched out into mental health and behavioral health, which hardly any physical therapist, or any occupational therapist or speech therapist, we really don't get in those arenas as much. And but I loved it. And I mean, I just learned, okay, so it's mental and physical, which I already had an intuition and knowing, because I don't know how many times a doctor would tell my patient, oh, you won't be able to do this ever again. Mm-mm. And I would say, forget what the doctor told you. Possibilities, infinite possibilities. And if you believe it, you can get it. And physical therapy is all about getting people to your highest quality, your highest functional ability, the greatest capacity that you can do, and build on your weaknesses and go from there, So I was always a component of no, 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 no. We're going to wipe that slate clean because it's what you believe. And I'm going to help you as far as you're willing to allow me, or, and nowadays the insurance will allow, which is pathetic.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I'm not in that arena anymore, because I am horrified and disappointed and sick at my stomach when I see that, they're only going to give you 4 visits for in-home physical therapy when you actually need 4 months.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
definitely.
crazy, but
Yeah.
that's a different whole arena. But
I know we could talk for days on that one.
yeah, but it's our soul, and it's a soul journey. And not only is it a physical journey, because it is, but it's a mental. And when you think about our physical body, our mental body, we also have an emotional body, which a lot of people don't even begin to think of. And we have our spiritual body. And our spiritual body incorporates our energetic field. So quantum physics, anybody who wants to learn more about that stuff, because that would take a whole nother segment, but we are more than what you see. We are molecules vibrating at a level, and that we're always transmuting. And we're in a time where we can heal even our DNA patterns.
Yeah.
And that's the magical. We are in a powerful time, and we are in a quickening, because as human beings, so I always tell people I'm a divine being embodying a human body, and having a human experience on this planet Earth. But we are divine beings. That means we're soul. We're connected to the universe. We vibrate at different patterns. That's what separates us from a monkey, from my brother, my sister. And we're all one. We have our own unique signature. And so, it's like me. I really am educating people on leaving a better signature behind. Your blueprint, and you can change it. And, it's like I tell people, it's like I'm constantly, I got out of the wheelchair, and I could barely stand up and transfer. And I'm, walking around doing, my balance, I still need some work, because it's an ongoing thing. But I'm healing, I'm continuing to heal and continuing to strive to be the best that I can possibly be. And that's whether it's physical or it's me wanting to change my life in another direction. If I don't like the way my life's going, I have the choice. Remember, we talked about that? I have the choice to change it. And you just pivot. Like Dr. Phil, I loved him because he would say, well, how's that working out for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the having the faith to be healed. And there's one of the things that I'll remind some of my clients sometimes. And I actually put this in one of my recordings recently because I had a hypnosis client and I sent her a recording, and she's very faith-based. So I felt comfortable with it. And so, in the Bible, every time there was a healing with Jesus, he would say, your faith made you well. Your faith is beautiful. Your faith. And he never said, I healed you.
Exactly.
He said, do you want to be healed? And then your faith. And so that's a big thing that, and that's why the placebo stuff is so big, because if people think they got the medicine, they can actually, their mind can make their body react to it like they did. And it's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. And people don't realize how amazing we are. As human beings, we are amazing. I mean, there's no mistakes in our design, and so much is possible. And I know we need to start wrapping it up, but if you don't like where it's heading you, and you're repeating the same pattern over and over and over, and it's not working for you, that's,
here's your
there's
sign.
something wrong. I'm not going to say you're sick because that's, but there's something wrong, here. And you need to stop and go, take a minute. And that's something I really teach people how to do is go within, focus, and get in your own true center. Now, you better believe I trust my intuition. Back when I was younger, I was learning how to do that. And I had to go that hard for whatever reason. Everything happens to us for a reason. And I've never regretted anything because how many people I've touched in their lives and how much richer my life is having been through that experience and having the knowledge and the wisdom, healer, heal thyself,
Yeah.
and I can truly say that I am we all are in a process of healing, period.
Right.
Unless you're just like, woo. But even then there's some healing you need to do. But, if you're happy with your life, that's fine. And but if you're not, start thinking, what do you want? And I help people figure out what they want, how to go in, how to trust their truth detector. James, our mentor, that's what he said. Oh, I like that. You're the truth detector. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to start using that. But it really is, it's like, it's in your gut.
Mm-hmm.
It really is, people. And I tell people, if you're feeling anxious about something and it's anxious in a bad way, because there's anxious as exciting. If it's anxious in a bad way, chances are you're not doing the right action. So take a moment, go inside and figure out, okay, I need to look at another course of direction and change that. It might be a little bit, it might be big, but it's the fact that you're going, oh, I'm recognizing it and bringing it up into your conscious awareness. And you got to take action. God's, God, the universe is not going to come and magically go, not to say that it can happen because, hey, I believe in possibilities, and I've definitely seen miracles not only in my own life, but
more likely
others.
to happen if you start acting on it.
Exactly.
Yes.
You can't just sit there and cry and whine about it. You have to go, okay, I'm ready and I'm going to do it and make the decision to do it.
And sometimes it's uncomfortable, but hey, so was whatever the tragedy is you went through. And in comparison, not such a big deal.
No.
And so, but the only way you can get past that is through it and around it and
over it, remove the obstacles, find another way to do it. Don't just keep beating your head against the same wall over and over again.
Yeah, because what is it? That was it. I forgot who it was. The definition, is it Einstein? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
I think right.
I may be wrong. I've got the quote right. I may be wrong on
no, it's the quote. That quote is right because I do, and lots of people use that,
it's Einstein. I don't know if it's Einstein.
I don't know for sure either.
Oh, that's what
I know a lot of things.
Well, I know a lot of things about things that I may not know how to direct you to where I found it.
Right. But hey, we have the internet, so you can look it up. But really, even in that, there's, these AIs, they can only take what people are feeding them. And if people are feeding them wrong information, you got to learn to discern and trust and know, what's right, what feels right to you, and what
one thing with
resonating.
AI, sometimes the AIs have, it's not that it's the wrong information, it's just old information.
Yeah.
So some of them it's not updated, it might be 2 years delay. Well, hell, in this world, 2 years is huge,
And they can only operate off of what's being fed to them. The information. So, and some people are putting wrong information. I mean, let's face it, there is a war going on there, dark versus light, good and evil, community versus piracy, tyrants. And, we're seeing it all around us. And we're in a time where it's quickening because it has to be shaken up. Things have to get shaken up to be better. It's like we didn't build our foundation well, so it's going to crumble. And, but there's so many of us that are here now that have, come through stuff that are able to reach out and say, hey, I am that hand reaching out to you. And I just want people to know, that is who I am. I'm not going to tell you, oh, I'm going to help you do da, 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 da. If I can't help you, I'm going to say, look at this, look at that, and let's see what your needs are. Because I'm not going to resonate with everybody, and
Right.
my way is not everybody's way, but you will find the way. You just have to continue to look and weed out, pull those
Right.
weeds out of the
Because
garden.
it's like that's why there's so many of us that do some of the similar
Exactly.
work, is because not somebody that won't resonate with me might resonate with you. And then
Right.
as it goes on the chain, the
Yeah.
thing is that the biggest thing I would like for people to take away is that, if you learn to listen to your intuition, it will
Hmm.
guide you so many times to
Yeah.
avoid things that maybe wouldn't have been so good. But also, I was reminded just the other day, because I was talking about the same thing, and they said, well, also your intuition can sometimes guide you to that a magical thing that you didn't see
Hmm.
coming either.
Yes.
And so I just want to remind everybody that intuition works amazingly well to keep you from getting hurt or keep you from being in a bad
Yes.
circumstance, but it also gives you this magical ability to almost sense like, whoa, that's the right way to go. That's the
Yeah.
right path. That's the right
Yeah.
person to talk to. And
Yes.
so it's
Yes.
not all,
Yes.
bad. It's a
Yeah.
development of both, and it's discerning the difference.
And it is discerning, period. And it's like the other, people going, well, how do I even begin? Get yourself in a quiet place where you can take time. It's so important that we take time out of our busy day and go, okay, I'm going to take a break. Me, and I just did it this weekend, is went out into nature. And I'm red. I'm sunburned a little bit because I got a little too much sun, but it's fine. I didn't do damage. I know when to go out in the right time of the day and not get so much. But it's like, and focus, and just my guidance, it just is spot on. It's like it leads me to this, to that, and there's no, like you and I meeting, there's no mistakes in the universe.
Mhm.
And even though our mentor coach, he was taken from us early on, but we came together for each other, in the group, and to continue, his legacy a little bit and integrate it into what we're doing. You do yours differently, I do mine differently. Everybody is a little different. And, we were talking about that because, there are people very Christian based, and I'm very, I have a Christian background, but I consider myself more of a spiritualist because I just the way I approach things. And that might turn some people off, but I do believe in God, and I do the divine being, but I do realize that there's a feminine and masculine aspects. We live in a world of duality. There's light and dark, good and evil, black and white, it goes on, but male and female principles. And we have to respect Mother Earth and Father Sky, and we are all divine. We are children of the divine. We are made up of them and their particles. And so therefore we all are. And coming together in community and reach out, people. If you'll look, there are people out, but you just got to learn and feel discernment,
Mhm. Definitely, definitely. Well, this has been amazing. I appreciate you so much for being here and sharing your love and light, and because it's beautiful. And so, for those that are listening right now and are watching, make sure you leave a comment, like I asked you to earlier. Leave a comment.
Yeah.
Ask a question. Do something that kind of helps Reaudan know, because she can check back once this is published to see, what have you said? What did you need help with? Did you have a
Yeah.
question? And then like, subscribe, and share, because that is how,
Yeah.
this message gets out more. And,
And
I've
yeah.
had some amazing guests on here, and I just want to help them to
Yeah,
spread the
thank
word.
you, and thank you. Yes,
My
and
pleasure.
collaborating. It's important that we support one another. Period. As people, as human beings, as people doing the same kind of work. But and I know you will put my contact
Yeah.
stuff. How to reach me and stuff out there.
Yeah.
But
It'll all be in the
you know,
description.
yeah. But people, just please reach out. Begin to look around you, because there's somebody out there, if you're needing help, that can help you. You know.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
you
Well,
just
before we
start looking.
go,
Mhm.
just if there's one place that you want them to have a link to, because I know you have a bunch of links, so I don't want to give them all the links, but for the people that are listening, if there's one link you want to give them, just tell them what it is, and then they can come back and look for the rest of them in the description.
Okay. Yeah. I would say my Facebook page at Lady of Love and Light on Facebook.
Okay.
You just put that in there, and when it comes up, it'll be a very etheric lady of light, and with a little green thing and energy, little crown, but it's a drawing, it's a painting, because there are people that try to imitate other people, and then they, and I would hate for someone who really needs help to find someone who really isn't, that means ill harm, because we know in the world we live in that's possible. But if you can do it at Reaudan and on Facebook too. And
All right, beautiful. Yeah,
yeah.
perfect. That way the people that are listening can gather that really quick, and they can look you up, because this is going to be when it's published, all the stuff will be in there, and so they can get in there and look you up. But when they listen to it, they might want to just go ahead and grab your information.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to go ahead and have that.
Thanks. And I do have a website, and it's ladyofloveandlight.com, all lower capitals.com, so that can describe in more detail.
So everybody knows a few ways that they can reach out to you, and then all the others will be in the comments, and I'll have my information in there as well, so you can reach out to me if you have any questions about the podcast or any questions about hypnosis or anything that I can help you with. So I'm going to go ahead and leave you with this quote that I just love, and this is how I end every episode. The best way to predict the future is create it. So what are you creating? And with that, I will say, see you later. Mwah.
It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you.